Have you ever wondered how far you'd go if your life depended on finding a way out of the desert? Imagine being lost, starving, with your lips cracked from thirst, knowing that one wrong step could mean your last. For most of us, the desert is just a place we drive through on the way to somewhere else, or maybe the backdrop of an old Western movie. But in 1849, for a group of pioneers chasing gold, Death Valley was no road trip. It was a trap. Many who entered never came back out. In fact, historians believe that more than 13,000 people lost their lives in Death Valley during the 1800s. Most of them lured by the promise of gold or swallowed by the unforgiving land. And yet, some of those deaths are wrapped in mystery, because they weren't just running out of food or water, they were chasing stories. Tales of mountains of silver, rivers of gold, and secret mines hidden in canyons that seemed to vanish overnight. To this day, locals still whisper about the Gunsight mine, the lost Breyfogle, and the gold strike that sparked sudden fortunes before leaving men empty-handed, or worse, never seen again. What makes these stories so haunting is that they blur the line between fact and legend. Were there really mines brimming with untold riches in Death Valley? Or did the desert itself create illusions so powerful that men walked straight into their graves chasing them? Before we dive deeper, I want to share something personal. I'm working hard to reach 1,000 subscribers as a small creator. If you appreciate stories like this one, please consider subscribing. Your support means everything to this channel. In the winter of 1849, hundreds of hopeful pioneers set out across the American West, desperate to reach California's gold fields before others could stake their claims. They were called the 49ers, and they came from all walks of life: farmers, clerks, even entire families, all convinced that fortune was waiting just over the horizon. But one group made a fateful decision. Instead of following the safer northern trails, they chose what they believed was a shortcut. This path led them into a place that would earn its name from their suffering: Death Valley. The land was merciless. The mountains seemed endless. The salt flats shimmered like water that wasn't there, and the blazing sun stripped away their strength day by day. Families abandoned wagons, killed their oxen for food, and carried what little they could on their backs. It was here that desperation turned into legend. Two men, William Lewis Manley and John Haney Rogers, became reluctant heroes. They walked out of the valley on foot, found a settlement, and returned to lead survivors to safety. Without them, many more would have died. When the survivors finally escaped, one woman is said to have looked back at the barren wasteland and whispered, "Goodbye, Death Valley." The name stuck, but survival was only part of the story. Along the way, some claimed they had stumbled across strange outcrops of glittering rock, what looked like silver, even gold. Stories spread like wildfire, hidden lodes waiting to be rediscovered. Soon, rumors of a lost Gunsight mine began to circulate, planting the seed for generations of treasure hunters to come. This is where fact and legend started to blur. Were these exhausted pioneers really seeing veins of silver? Or was it a mirage born of hunger and desperation? Either way, the myth of lost mines in Death Valley was born from their struggle, and it would lure countless others into the desert, chasing riches that always seemed just out of reach. The first and perhaps most famous legend is the lost Gunsight mine. The story traces back to the survivors of that fateful 1849 crossing. Some of them, while stumbling through the mountains, picked up chunks of dark rock streaked with shining silver. They believed it was the key to riches beyond imagination. One prospector later fashioned his rifle sight from a piece of this ore, hence the name Gunsight. Word spread quickly, and suddenly every drifter, adventurer, and conman wanted to be the one to rediscover this miraculous silver lode. But here's the catch: nobody ever could. Treasure hunters followed vague maps and half-remembered trails, convinced they were close. Some vanished without a trace. Others returned empty-handed, claiming the desert swallowed the mine as if it had never existed. To this day, no proven location of the Gunsight mine has ever been found. Was it real, or a hallucination of starving men? That's the mystery that still lingers, and it's one that keeps treasure hunters chasing ghosts to this very day. Another tale that keeps surfacing is Breyfogle's lost mine. Charles Breyfogle, a prospector, claimed in the 1860s that he had discovered an incredibly rich vein of gold somewhere near Death Valley. But before he could return with a proper expedition, he was attacked, captured by Native Americans, and eventually released. By the time Breyfogle tried to find his strike again, the exact location was gone. Every attempt led him in circles. He spent the rest of his life chasing shadows, convinced he was always just one canyon away from rediscovery. Many followed in his footsteps, some believing they had cracked his trail, but Breyfogle's lost vein never reappeared. And so, the legend grew. Maybe the gold was real, or maybe it was a mirage that would destroy anyone who dared to seek it. Unlike many lost legends, the Keane Wonder Mine was very real, and for a time, very profitable. Discovered in 1904, it produced thousands of ounces of gold and became one of the most successful mining operations in Death Valley. The mine sparked the rise of nearby boom towns, and for a brief moment, the desert seemed to surrender its riches. The operation was so ambitious that a massive tramway was built to haul ore across the rugged mountains, a marvel of engineering still standing in ruins today. But like every fortune in Death Valley, it didn't last. The mine shut down in 1912, plagued by disputes, debts, and the sheer difficulty of extracting ore from such hostile terrain. By the 1940s, it was abandoned entirely. Today, its ruins cling to the mountainside, a ghostly skeleton of past wealth. Looking at it, you can't help but wonder, if even the Wonder Mine could not endure, what hope did the others ever have? Some discoveries began by accident. In 1907, a prospector searching for his wandering burro stumbled on gold-bearing quartz. The find became known as the Lost Burro Mine. At first, it seemed like fortune had smiled on him. The mine changed hands multiple times and produced thousands of dollars worth of gold. But as quickly as it rose, it faded into obscurity. Harsh conditions, high costs, and dwindling yields forced its abandonment. Today, the crumbling cabins and rusted machinery of the Lost Burro Mine still stand in the desert, a silent reminder of how easily fortune turns to dust. And yet, some say that when the sun sets just right, the rocks around the old mine still shimmer with hidden veins, a promise that keeps dreamers coming back. Then there's the Big Bell Mine, once a bustling hub of gold fever in the 1930s. This wasn't just a mining site, it was a rough-and-tumble world of saloons, gambling, and gunfights. One of its most infamous characters was Johnny Behind the Gun, a gambler who supposedly won part of the mine in a poker game. For a while, Big Bell produced real wealth, and its small community thrived. But when World War II broke out, mining was halted nationwide. By 1941, Big Bell was abandoned, left exactly as it was. Walking through its remains today feels eerie. Rusted trucks, scattered tools, and half-standing buildings look as if the miners might walk back in at any moment. But no one ever did. The desert froze Big Bell in time, its silence whispering a warning. In Death Valley, even when you win, you lose. One by one, these mines promised fortune, and one by one, they were swallowed by the sand. So why does Death Valley never let men keep their gold? Maybe it's the heat, maybe it's the terrain, or maybe the desert has secrets it refuses to give up. Death Valley is more than just hot. It's one of the harshest environments on Earth. In the summer, ground temperatures can soar past 200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt shoes. Water is almost impossible to find, and the jagged terrain stretches for miles without mercy. For prospectors, this wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a death sentence waiting to happen. Even the mines that seemed promising were doomed by isolation. Hauling ore out of deep canyons required miles of wagon trails or costly tramways. Supplies had to be dragged in from hundreds of miles away, and by the time the gold reached civilization, profits often vanished into debt. Fortune always looked bigger on the mountain than it did on the scale. But it wasn't just nature working against them. The mining industry of the West was built on boom and bust. A single rumor could draw hundreds of men to a barren stretch of land, only for them to discover the ore was poor or already claimed. Investors pulled their money, equipment was abandoned, and camps emptied overnight. And then there were the myths. Tales of hidden mines, treasure maps, and rich veins often came from desperate men trying to sell worthless claims or lure partners into risky ventures. Some legends, like Breyfogle's or the Gunsight, may have been little more than stories passed around campfires. Stories that destroyed lives when others went searching. So why does Death Valley keep its secrets? Because this land is a trickster. It offers just enough hope to lure men deeper in, then takes everything from them. The desert doesn't need to hide its riches. It simply buries them under heat, distance, and time until the dreamers give up or vanish. And yet, Despite all of this, people keep searching. Something about the possibility of lost treasure is stronger than fear, stronger than reason. Because if even one of those old legends turned out to be true, it could rewrite everything we thought we knew about Death Valley. Today, Death Valley National Park protects over 3 million acres of desert, canyons, and mountains. On the surface, it feels timeless, endless sand, rock, and silence. But hidden in the folds of the land are the remnants of dreams that refuse to die. Rusting tramway towers still cling to the mountainsides where the Keane wonder mine once hauled gold. Collapsing wooden cabins at the lost Burro site tell of lonely nights when miners believed fortune was just one strike away. At Big Bell, scattered tools and vehicles remain exactly as they were left in 1941, as if the miners had simply walked away for lunch and never returned. What makes these ruins haunting isn't just their silence, it's the feeling that they're frozen mid-story. They are not polished museum pieces, but raw scars, left open to the desert wind. Park rangers do what they can to preserve them, but Death Valley is too vast, too unforgiving. Many structures are left to decay, slowly disappearing back into the sand, just like the men who built them. And yet these places continue to draw people in. Hikers wander the trails to stand among the ruins, ghost hunters bring their equipment, and treasure seekers still arrive with metal detectors and old maps, hoping against hope to stumble upon what so many before them could not. The truth is, Death Valley doesn't just preserve history, it preserves obsession. Every broken pickaxe and rusted cartwheel whispers the same story, that the desert always wins. And still, the question hangs in the air. What if the next person to wander these ruins is the one who finally uncovers the secret? In the end, the story of Death Valley's lost mines isn't just about gold or silver. It's about people, ordinary men and women who gambled everything against a desert that never played fair. Some found hope, many found despair, and a few vanished so completely that only their legends remain. What makes these stories timeless is that they reflect something deep in us, the hunger for more, the dream that somewhere, just out of reach, there's a discovery that could change everything. That same hunger pulled pioneers into Death Valley in 1849, and it's the same hunger that still pulls explorers and storytellers back there today. When you stand among the ruins, with the silence pressing in and the mountains rising like walls, it's hard not to wonder, are the legends true? Could there still be a fortune hidden beneath the sand, waiting for the one person willing to risk it all? Maybe that's why these stories never die, because even if the desert keeps its secrets, the dream of lost gold belongs to all of us. And if stories like this spark your curiosity too, let me know in the comments what mystery you'd chase. Share this with a friend who loves history, and subscribe so you don't miss the next legend waiting to be unearthed.